Good morning, everybody. Texas Homer. This is IT Live, brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. I am broadcasting live from my grandmother's house in wonderful San Marcos, Texas. Next to me is Eric Nolene. He's in Lake Tahoe area, the region. And then we got Coach Dub in DFW.
Yeah.
He's not in a cool – Coach Dub's not in a cool place right now, but it's all good. All right, so today, guys, we're going to talk kind of the new world of recruiting, what it means implication-wise. We'll talk about the awesome getting turn time, the Ojo stuff, but really it's just a way to talk about how this kind of landscape is changing and then what that means. And also we need offensive tackles, so that's kind of why people glommed onto this more. We'll talk about that room going forward, and then a little bit of team news from Eric. You know, he's always batting 1,000 there. Good morning, Roaster. Good morning, Splendid Daddy. So, guys, I'm only on a single-screen laptop here, and I'm used to my 3-monitor setup, so you'll have to excuse me if I'm a little slower than usual at pulling things up. Okay, let's see if you guys can see this. Cool. You guys can see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So, but first things first, I want to talk turn time. So, Charlie was on site. How did that go? You killed this recruitment, man. You've been all over it. Got a little bit questionable, I guess, down the stretch there with Michigan hanging around and stuff like that. But just give us the upside on John Turntine, man.
Yeah, man, look, absolutely love this kid, not just as a football player, but as a person. I think he comes from a great foundation of a family. I think you get one of those guys that's going to be in the trenches who can battle and get through ups and downs, right, and never sweat. Turntine's like I said, great kid, but, man, just being there, seeing the orange smoke go in the air was phenomenal. The food was great, too, but being around him, just being around his entire family and seeing the nucleus that supports him, like I see why he is the kid he is, right? I think Texas is getting a complete person, not just a football player, but, man, excellent dude on the field. Physical, really gets out there, just wants to bully people, man, and get out there. Guy you can use in multiple ways, too. He can get out and set the edge as far as like a perimeter on screens. He'll get out there and kill the perimeter guy. Do whatever you ask him to do, man. He's just one of those guys who just wants to play and doesn't matter where you put him, even though he's a tackle. Look, and I saw him, seeing him this past, was it Friday? I guess that's the 4th. He's grown a lot more. I mean, he's a legit like 6'4", maybe 6'4.5". Standing next to some of his former teammates who are in college now, and standing next to Jonathan Cunningham, who's at Texas, who's 6'3", and Turntine kind of towers over those guys. And so seeing that, people question his height and everything like that, or whatever the case, like he's a legit 6'4.5" now, man. So with those long arms, I want to say 81 inch wingspan. He said, I think that's phenomenal. I think he fits a left tackle perfectly.
Eric, what's your thoughts on Turntine, and what's your thoughts on, we often say someone needs to be X height, and me and Ian were discussing this. Height normally accompanies arm length, right? So it's kind of a proxy. If you have the arm length, do we care about your height necessarily? All that kind of measurable stuff about Turntine.
No, not really. I mean, if you have 34-inch arms, you're going to be perfectly fine playing offensive tackle. That's the name of the game. So yeah, they had to have him. Obviously, losing Ojo, they increased the need for Turntine. It was already a high need for Turntine. They never wanted to split them. They wanted both. Given the need at tackle. That's not going to happen, but hey, they got Turntine, defended home territory there. That guy felt like someone that was going to end up to Texas, not just because of football, but for all the other reasons that he ended up mentioning in Charlie's article about him. So that would have been a worse beat in some ways, just because that kid seems tailor-made to go to UT, even if he didn't play football. So big need. I think he's more ready than people realize. He does have to add more weight on for sure. But when I was at Kelvin Banks' jersey ceremony for the Under Armour game his senior year, and he was about 285. Turntine by December, he might be weighing around 285, maybe even 290. So I'm not expecting him to have to play early, or at least start early like Kelvin did. But if Texas needs him to play in a pinch, maybe he will be able to as a true freshman, similar to how Nick Brooks is able to this year.
Yeah. In bodybuilding, they say all the great bodybuilders are the greatest eaters. And I've always taken that with offensive line too. As long as those kids will put on the weight, man, they just have to eat a lot of food. But that's going to be the trick. And the trick is also not to make sure it's not mostly the Taco Bell diet in order to get those calories in.
Well, you can tell by the way he leaned up. He cares about what he eats. Now he just needs to eat more of it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You know how hard it is though to eat 4,000 calories of like chicken and like you almost have to go to Taco Bell. It's crazy to eat clean at that scale. I mean, peanut butter.
Yeah, but he's going to be burning a lot more calories than a bodybuilder because they run the hell out of you at Texas.
For sure. Yeah, he's actually doing cardio. Give him a red shirt year and let him put on a good 15 to 20 pounds. Yeah, and he moves well. I told you guys when I saw the canisters, they look like bear spray, and bear spray is orange. And so in my head, I was like, please God, make sure that they do not mace the entire crowd. But I haven't even seen they're getting like cool stuff now to announce this stuff. So turn time was big, really important to tackle. And then of course we had the loss to Ojo, and I'm not glad that we missed on him, but I am glad me and Eric's antennas went up when those announcement times were weird. And so generally you don't, unless these guys are like best buds, you generally would space out your announcements, especially if you're at the same position. If you're both high ranking, the coaches would generally prefer maybe morning and night. But then you saw that they're announcing within an hour of each other. That just felt weird to me. And then when I talked to Eric a couple days ago, he was like, yeah, something's off here. And then shortly we realized what was off. But that was kind of the first hint to me that, maybe one of them wasn't going to go to Texas. All right. So we had the Texas Tech deal announced. I'm not going to like super key into that because I've heard like 3 or 4 different reports on what that deal was. One was $5 million over 3 years guaranteed. The other one was lesser than that. It was just a couple years or like 750,000. So I'm not really sure there. But what I want to talk about is the differences that Eric wrote on this article on roster building and what that means for us going forward. And I have some of my own thoughts that we'll kind of tack into here. But my first question is, whenever you have a stacked roster, meaning that we have Anthony Hill, Colin Simmons, Arch Manning, all of these guys, same with Ohio State, same with Georgia, right? A majority of your money immediately is going towards just pure retention. Yep. If you don't have that level or caliber of athlete on your roster, then you can turn that money elsewhere and kind of try to build it up through recruiting. So is there a natural cap that we're seeing with the top teams that they have to spend so much on their current roster? It allows for teams that don't have deep rosters to, say, overpay market value for a player?
Yeah, absolutely. That's being reflected in the amount of 5 stars. I retweeted a graphic yesterday. The amount of 5 stars going to random schools. Syracuse got one recently. Texas Tech doesn't normally get a 5-star. They got Micah Hudson before that was an NIL era deal too. But you're seeing a lot more. BYU just got a 5-star quarterback. Washington has a 5-star. They don't normally get 5 stars. They don't have the roster that they did just a couple years ago when they beat Texas in the semifinals. So you're seeing a lot of schools that have the ability because they don't have the retention or really, it's not even just the superstars. It's the baseline players. Jelani McDonald isn't free. A lot of teams, Syracuse, Jelani McDonald would be one of the 4 or 5 best players on the team probably. And he may eventually become that at Texas, but I don't think he's quite there yet. Michael Taft, second team All-American, bringing him back, that's not cheap. So it's not just the superstars. You can call Taft a superstar. That's probably accurate. But just the average baseline player at Texas is much more expensive than the average baseline player anywhere else. And you're allowing these guys to break market when they see fit. Now, how long is that? Is that durable? I don't know. Syracuse is a little bit different than Tech because Tech spent a boatload in the portal as well. So Tech has a lot of money. They're going to have a huge roster imbalance this season. I'm not sure when it's going to catch up with them. That'll come down to quarterback play, coaching, and how quickly those guys adapt to the schemes. But they're going to have a severe roster imbalance this season, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. There's going to be games that they dominate based on their having the superstar level players at a few positions. But there's going to be others when lack of depth, lack of overall talent is going to hurt them significantly.
It was that article or that graphic you retweeted. There's 17 teams with a 5-star.
Yeah, just the sheer number of them tells
We've never seen that, and so it's the irony is that this was supposed to destroy the younger or the lower ranks, and that it was going to destroy G5. And all we've seen is a promotion of a ton of G5 teams now in the pack, and then we're seeing more parity.
Let me relay a conversation I had years ago. It was actually with Major Applewhite. It was over where NIL was going. This was before it was instituted, actually. This is probably 2020 or so, before it became law. I said the same thing. I told my best friend, who's a Texas State fan, that this could actually help schools like Texas State if they have that motivated donor. And as I talked about at majors, right? Yeah, you're right. The guy who invented the cone water cooler cup and became filthy rich off of it. If he went to some random school like UTEP, he could make them, he could donate to them and build them up. You're seeing that at a couple schools where there's concerted effort. Namely, Cody Campbell gets all the headlines, and I don't think Cody Campbell's the villain Texas fans should make him out to be. He's an ally when it comes to NIL. He wants NIL just as much as Texas donors do. But when you have those super motivated donors in certain places, they're able to do things like this. But a lot of it has to do with what we're talking about, roster imbalances, where there's a lot of leftover money. They're not having to pay 85 guys a lot, a good amount. Texas has to pay 85 guys a good amount just to be on the roster.
Yeah, and so
huge difference.
Go ahead, Coach. Sorry.
I was saying that's a huge difference. Just having this discussion with so many people, like the retention of, I guess, being good. It's hard. Like I guess that's the price of being good, having so many talented players. And then also piggyback off of, you look at Sacramento State, they landed a 4-star receiver over LSU and Ole Miss. Like, how did that happen? And normally it definitely just wouldn't happen before NIL or anything like that. But boosters are back in these schools more than ever, just trying to get the best players possible. So, I mean, maybe this, I don't know, y'all think this is the anomaly just going to be this season only where it's like this? Or I guess kind of going forward, will it be the exact same?
I'm waiting. We're still not sure. This ties into Roaster's question. We're still not entirely sure how these things are boiling down, right? If it's just revenue share, then everybody's going to be in the same boat. But it doesn't look like it's just revenue share. As you know, Bam, like I said, I don't think Nick Saban's going to be complaining about NIL anymore. Bama's on a run right now. Georgia A&M are recruiting at a high level. I don't think it's all revenue share, but that's, people are still trying to figure out how to navigate their usage of collectives. I think they're testing the boundaries to see, where the lawsuits are going to be, where the pushback is from the commission that's supposed to enforce these laws, and all that. So right now it is, it's another adaptation period to this House settlement. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to play out. I'm not worried about Texas long term, but they're going to have to navigate some bumps during this cycle. That's why I've been calling it 2022 and 2025 for the last month.
Yeah, it doesn't feel exactly like revenue sharing.
Wow.
And so we'll see. Roaster asked a good question. Tech doesn't apply here, but how are other elite teams with already loaded rosters, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia A&M, currently dominating in recruiting and still have money to retain their current 5 and 4 stars? Is it just a typical thing where Texas keeps its powder dry in the summer for whatever reason, and then it'll crystallize later on exactly what they need to spend? Why is that the other brands don't seem to be having that issue in this part of the cycle?
Yeah, well, I mean, A&M had a whole lot of money come off the books from the D linemen that they had. They were taking up a lot of oxygen in that room. I mean, Sark is going to remain patient. He's not going to feel the need to go, like this comment says, to go spend $5 million on Tyler Atkinson. That ain't happening. He's going to keep his powder dry and see how things play out. If they have to go higher, they will. People that don't trust Sark at this point are lunatics.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been an interesting summer. So what does this mean, right? If the 5 stars are getting picked off and they're getting thrown around the nation and into leagues that we don't play, what is this going to mean for coaching? Depth's still going to matter because your still overall quality of athletes going to be higher. But is it going to turn into like, hey, man, the better coaches are going to shine even more now because it's not necessarily the same thing of like, Bama was Saban where you could just stock everybody. How's that going to kind of change the value of on-field coaching if you don't have a 3 extra 5 stars you're used to getting?
Well, I mean, anytime you have the competition, it's going to come down to the margins, and you got to evaluate very well. You still have to pick about how much depth do you have, how much portal do you use now. Texas should probably carry a few less offensive linemen, especially guards, and use the portal a little bit more. You can't have dead money on the bench. Some of these teams are going to have dead money on the bench. Felix Ojo, to me, I guess we don't know exactly what his deal was. I don't think there's no way it was as low as $750 a year. I just don't believe that for a second. How that first season, you might as well wipe that from the books. You're not going to get the value that you're paying in that season. So, how smart are you with these deals? It's still going to come back to smart front offices, for lack of a better term, an evaluation, and then coaching on the field. Of course, it's not going to become full parity because, Texas is still going to be a lot more attractive than most of these other places. If all things are still equal, then you still have the advantage of Texas. You still have the advantage of corporate NIL, and many other reasons that people choose Texas over these schools. So we'll never reach full parity. I still think Texas has a lot of advantages. We're just in a point where everything is kind of chaotic, but we're going to have order coming out of it eventually. I don't know how soon. We're still got a lot of lawsuits ahead of us.
Do you think offensive tackle could become more of a portal position versus a high school position? So we know it's a premium NFL position, so you're going to have to pay more out of high school. If they're not ready year one, which most won't, you'll have dead cap sitting on the bench. Do you take the Ohio State path where you just scout all year and have a one and done tackle? That's my point. Is to me, it seems like it would make sense to target tackles in the portal more with their development curve of, sometimes taking 2 to 3 years to even show up.
That's a good one. Hey, for me, I feel like Sark can do whatever's best for the team. I feel like if there's a tackle in the portal that's better than what you feel like you have, I don't feel like he's afraid to go out there and make that move. I think we've seen in the past, every room that needs to be uplifted and changed or bettered, for lack of terms, like he's always made that decision to go and find a player. If it's via portal, high school, if the guys from high school aren't ready, you feel like the guys on your roster aren't ready, then go grab a portal dude. I don't think he's afraid to do it because he's all about winning, right? He said he's obsessed with winning. I think he'll do anything it takes to, if he feels the need to have a 1-year rental at tackle, I think he'll do so. That's just me.
Eric, do you think that's where it's headed anyways with our lack of tackles right now?
Yeah, the only problem is I think tackles are only going to keep getting more expensive. And so, it might change the calculus and the math. I think what he has to do is take more max rights. And, I was excited about John Mills last year. The big kid out of the South, out of the Bay Area, who ended up flipping late in the cycle for this very reason. I celebrate some of these lower rated recruits because I realize what it means for the roster long term. It allows you to stack, it allows you to go get some of the more elite guys. So when they find a very affordable but still high upside player, that's something to get excited about. Everybody should have been more excited about Max Wright's commitment. Nicholas Robertson too, even though he's more guard. Luckily, they're only looking at taking one guard this cycle. Versatility matters. That's why I was valuing Zayden Krempin because he can be a tackle, or he could be. You need tackles that can become guards if it doesn't work out at tackle, because if you take a lot of tackles, eventually you're going to have a log jam. You just need a by any means necessary approach to the most important positions. Tackle is one where you have to take a left tackle every single cycle. Then you have to take another tackle that could play either left tackle or right tackle, or perhaps guard. That has to be every single cycle without fail. And they've had some bad luck with some guys leaving after 3 years. Not bad luck necessarily with Kelvin, but bad luck with Cam Williams leaving. Yeah. But you also have to prepare for that. That's something that you have to identify early in the process. Which guys are likely to leave early and chase the NFL payday, right? Maybe before it's time. You should not be caught off guard by someone that's been in your program for 3 years.
It's kind of the trick too, and this is not a knock on Felix Ojo, but Ojo is a very confident young man, and so he's like, I want to prove that I'm the number one tackle. That translates to I want on the field now, and that also translates into I'm going to be a 3-and-out player. I'm of that caliber, and that eval matters, man. You need guys who are willing to cook for 3 years, because the problem is if you just take all these NFL tackles, we talked about this all off season. The 3-and-out at tackle is great for your NFL draft board, but it's not great for roster management. So you do want some guys that can cook, and if you're taking a guy at that high caliber, he has no intention to wait. And that's going to have an effect too. So
he's going to be likely overdrafted because he's got the traits.
Correct.
So they're going to, even if he's not ready, the NFL will still take him,
And you don't want people keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like that's why I really liked what Campbell did, because Campbell came out in Banks with that class. He was higher rated than Banks, right? There's this pressure of like Banks is going, I got to go, right? There's a little bit of that.
That was a silly ranking, but yes, he was.
But you get what my point is. When the elite guys get nervous when their classmates start going and they don't, and it takes maturity. I think we saw that with Cam Williams. Is like, I'm going out now, right? And Campbell didn't do that. But that's also the risk. Anytime you take these elite recruits is that they feel they need to be 3-and-out, even when that's not necessarily best for them or the team. All right, before we keep going, let's hear a quick word from Academy Sports and Outdoors, guys. We're getting ready for some back-to-school stuff.
All right, who's ready?
I'm open.
Nothing like an Academy Sports and Outdoors trip, man. All right, let's look at some comments, see if I missed anything here. Oh, this is interesting. Joe C is retiring this year. Have y'all seen that? It might have happened right before we went on.
Yeah, I just got a text right before we came on from Joe. I'm surprised that we don't have Ian chiming in right now live.
Ian can't wait. So that's interesting because Ian was that was a text in the group chat where Ian was basically saying the Nagy stuff better work or else Joe C could be in peril and Venables. But it seems like Joe C is not even going to risk that. He was a great athletic director. It's just kind of a weird time for them. But that will definitely matter. That hire is going to matter too. And what's going on at OU matters. You need to pay attention to if Nagy's able to do this. I can't remember who was talking about this, but they have their own evaluation system. All teams do. But what they're doing is they're evaluating the price offer versus value. So if they see a 3-star tackle that has the traits for the NFL, but is on a longer curve versus the 5-star that has the traits, but is asking for a ton of money, they're going to take the 3-star. And so they're trying to moneyball this. And in this new kind of world, the teams that can find value and have a system of value focus successfully are going to have a really good advantage. So that's something that's really big for me to watch what's going on at OU, because that model could end up being very valuable in the future, as we've seen, because you don't want to match all these rates all the time, clearly.
It might help them financially, but on the field, if you're not developing these guys, you're not going to be around very long, right? And in my opinion. So, I mean, kudos to, I guess trying to set the trend and do that, but you better win too.
Good luck, Biedenbaugh.
Yeah. We also have the development advantage. So I think a really good case would be Christian Jones, right? In the development world. Kelvin Banks, that wasn't a development job. The kid started game 1 and came in. So it's, I'm sure he was taught scheme and all that, but Kelvin Banks played against 4 first-round edges in year 1. He looked all right. So at the top of the thing, I'm not giving a Kelvin Banks development job there. Cam came out too early, so I can't judge what he would look like in the next year, which he really should have had. But the development jobs of like Hayden Connor, that kind of stuff, keeping Jake Majors online, that stuff's important. We're going to see how Campbell looks. So we do have an development advantage over Tech, but it's not purely just because someone went to the NFL, we developed them. Sometimes they were already there. And Tech's all right in their offensive line stuff. They had a 3rd rounder from Ojo's school that came out. But we kind of have this concept of like, if you don't go to Texas, that means you're just not going to the NFL. And that's just not necessarily how it works. Joe, you cannot retire. You're the soul of it. Don't do it, Joe. All right. What's the latest with Brandon Baker, and what's your predictions for right tackle this season? Y'all can wait and answer when we get the team updates. No, we can hit this now. It's offensive line.
The latest is, the expectation is he's probably going to be average, maybe slightly above average, solid. Pretty good pass blocker. Not the most power at the point of attack. Getting stronger. Still young, right? He's only a 2nd-year player. He's gonna be the starter. They only really have 3 tackles right now. Gooseby, of course, and then you got Nick Brooks, who's a true freshman, and then first-year starter Brandon Baker. That's why we're talking about offensive tackle for the first 25 minutes of this show.
Yeah, and the reality is because next year is where we can probably get by this year. Next year is where it looks scary at offensive tackle.
We'll have to go portal next year, and Nick Brooks has to be a guy. Nick Brooks has to be everything that we're hearing about, and they're almost always right when they pump up a player. So I feel good about Nick Brooks. But man, Nick Brooks has to be good next year, not just solid. They can't if Arch comes back, they cannot afford to have question marks at tackle.
And you also, for whatever, you never want to influence Arch not leave or choosing to leave, right? If he looks at the tackles like maybe I do look at that, you don't want to do that either. So Gooseby will be solid. We know that. Baker at right tackle. We just want to look going forward next year. We have to get that solved.
Gooseby's going to be good, not just solid. He's going to be good, and he's going to be out.
Dude, you just watch his little brother too, man. Like that basketball skill. It's a crazy mix of athletes. But also, man, it's like I think here, Scott B. Good luck finding a Gooseby every other cycle. Yeah, that's the thing too. When we're talking about value, it's hard to find that much value, but we'll see.
Yeah, that was a bad that and it wasn't just the networks that missed on him because Texas flipped him from TCU. It wasn't like every school was coming after him, but that was one that we didn't understand because he's got the size, length. You saw the athleticism on two settings. I think he did track too. I think he threw discus. I think he's pretty good. Yeah, I know he's a good basketball player. I have to revisit that. I think he was good at discus too. Anyway, he had a really strong athletic profile. Never should have been ranked where he was, which makes Scott be 100% right. You're not going to find that guy every other cycle. Hey, but he's getting paid now.
Yeah. Shout out A&M game. Thank you, Kelvin Banks. That was really nice of you.
Right.
All right. Do you think this offensive line is capable of being a Joe Moore Award nominee this season?
I mean, nominees, one thing, finalists, semifinalists, that's a whole other thing. I don't think they'll be a finalist. I'm not even sure they'll be a semifinalist. I think they will be. I think they will be pretty good. You could chime that in with another person asking what the prediction. It's not really a prediction. It's what it is right now. Is not Zena. He's got Zena there, but it's Neto at guard. Obviously, Gooseby at left tackle. Cole Hudson, DJ Campbell, and Brandon Baker. That's exactly what it is, and that's almost assuredly what it will be against Ohio State.
The athleticism here does stand out, though, right? You have Gooseby, Umeazulu can move.
Yeah,
of course, DJ can move. I mean, that's really good on pulling guards, right? And then Baker, of course, the 5-star, he had good movement. So as far as just like athleticism, this is a good looking lineup. It's just how well do they play together?
Yeah, and I don't. Charlie should talk about O-line more than me, but the depth is a big concern. Starters are one thing. Can somebody come in and do what Trevor Gooseby did when he did it at those crucial moments in the season? I mean, that was against A&M, Clemson, and was it A&M, Clemson, and Georgia that he played, or A&M, Georgia, Clemson in a row?
Yeah,
maybe Nick Brooks can do it. What we're hearing about Nick Brooks is he's going to be a very high draft pick at some point, but that's he's got a long time between now and then.
But one thing I guess about Nick Brooks, honestly, he came in and put the work in. He slimmed down, right? Like that's hard to do unless you're dedicated and actually going to come in and do the work. Sometimes you can blow up even bigger, or you don't lose the way you're not really serious about when you come in. So it tells me a lot that mentally or maturity, he came in, okay, I'm gonna work. I want to be next. I'm gonna prove everybody that I can play tackle, so to speak. When some people say he may play guard, the whole nine. So I think for me with the offensive line, yeah, they're athletic, but can they get a push consistently, right? Like you talk about Baker, does he have much power when it's time in the run game? Man? Can he move people off the ball and can he set the edge and hook that defensive end? I think that's yet to be seen, but I mean, look, we got all summer, man. I mean, those guys are out there working. Let's just kind of see. I think it's a game-by-game basis for me with the offensive line. As the more snaps they take together, they'll gel together, and we'll just kind of see, by midseason what they may be. I mean, I think they'll progress as they go. I like most people do. It's just on paper. It's hard to gauge because you haven't seen so many guys play. You're just looking at it on paper. But I think who Kyle Flood is and how he develops, I think this offensive line will gel. I think they'll get better as the season goes.
Yeah, I will say that the same sources that felt pretty good about D tackle last year after spring ball feel good about the starters on the offensive line. There is some concern about depth for sure. They're a little bit more optimistic on the offensive line than I am. Just I have some questions, but I do think that there's the chance that they're going to be good, and especially in what they major in. If they're majoring in gap schemes like we've been thinking, I think they have a chance to be good in that regard.
Yeah, the run game is going to be super important because we have the quarterback run tied to that too. If we can get it done in the red zone,
right?
But I'm excited to see what Flood's able to do this year. I want to see a little bit more than just great pass blocking. Of course, that's a huge part, but I want to see a more well-rounded situational offensive line, especially one that doesn't kill themselves with awfully timed penalties. Like I watched Mississippi State with Arch, and Arch pretty much won that game himself. I mean, we were just trying to kill drives the whole time. So that's a big trick. Now let's do one final thing in recruiting, and then we're going to hit team news stuff. Will Flood circle back on Rosenborough or Crimpin? Seemed like both like Texas, but Ojo got prioritized.
Look, I feel like they'll definitely circle back on Crimpin. I mean, look, that was close. That was a close recruitment, man. He really loved Coach California. He loved Texas. Until paying his paper in December, I think you have to. And Eric's mentioned this before. Texas doesn't come off their big board. They continue to recruit the big board, right, until it's over. We've seen it a number of times every year that a kid may be committed somewhere else or leaning somewhere else, and then Texas gets them in the end. So I think they don't give up on Crimpin for sure.
Krempen's a huge need.
Yeah.
I think the issue that hurt Texas was that he didn't feel he was going to get a chance to play tackle because of Ojo, the implied assumption that Ojo was going to be in the class.
Yeah.
Now that assumption is gone. So if that was a big factor, then he's got no reason to stop looking at Texas. He's gonna feel a lot better about getting that shot at tackle. And like we said, man, there's not a lot of places where Texas can offer playing time across the depth chart. Offensive tackle is going to be one of them. So I think Texas is probably looking a lot more attracted to him before. Now the Aggies, man, once you commit to Aggie, they get you bought in. You start learning the hand signals and stuff. They're also probably gonna pay him. Ojo going to Tech probably got Krempen another bump. Whatever they're offering him. He's probably not even the type to care. That's another thing. Turntime didn't care about. It was not an NIL driven recruitment. That's something that Texas has to continue to select for people that see the big picture, because they're not going to hold you hostage over time. Krempen reminds me of like Turntime in that regard. I don't think he's holding schools hostage. I think he wants to go somewhere he can be developed, where he fits the culture. So I wouldn't rule out Krempen. I think I texted the group about 2 minutes after Ojo committed to Tech. I said, well, we need to start talking to Zayden.
Yeah, everything is Krempen. What's up with Lee? What's up with Rosenberg? So yeah, and I like Krempen a lot, man. Watch his tape. It was annoying kind of having to defend him earlier in the cycle. It's like, guys, he can play tackle.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's that was a lot of recruiting focus and offensive line focus. Let's look at the rest of the team here as I awkwardly try to pull up another tab. All right, y'all can see this one now, right?
Yeah.
Cool. First question, we'll hit running back here. We had a question about Baxter. We'll hit that when we hit running backs. Okay, so wide receiver. This was interesting. So Niblett caught, what did you say, a corner route?
Yes.
From the slot. So we're looking at some smash concept is my guess. And so you have him at running back to nickel, back over at running back, and he can provide the Keelan flexibility, 21, right? So like two backs. You have the threat of Jaden Blue that offered. So we know he's fast as hell. But it's even looking like he has a better shot than, purely a gadget player like Robinson. And the coaches, sometimes when they move players around, they're hinting that they need to leave, right? You'll hear like a running back get moved to linebacker. The next step is SMU, baby. But this one they're searching desperately how to integrate Ryan Niblett. They love his game, and they're just trying to figure out how to get him on the field. So kind of what's the update there, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I put him at wide receiver because his biggest play this week was a reception down the field. A lot of times he's making receptions out of the backfield too. So he's, I don't even know what to call him, wide receiver or running back. It'll be interesting when the roster comes out. I imagine they'll have him at running back. I have him at wide receiver here because that's where he was making the play out of the slot. But they motion him around a lot. They motion him from wide receiver to running back or vice versa. They love his speed. But it's not just the athletic profile that they love. They love the kid. They love the player. They love the physicality, the toughness, the selflessness. He's one of those guys that coaches gravitate to because he does everything the right way. He's a coach favorite, but not in a way that they show him favoritism, but in a way that they just want to keep getting him involved any way they can. And they realize they have a dangerous weapon on their hands. They just got to tinker and figure out the right fit for him. And then it'll be interesting to see how often they break him out. Like, is he going to be a staple of the offense, or is it something that we see a lot versus Ohio State, and then he kind of goes back on the shelf a little bit during September? I'll be curious to see how his role evolves. But one thing's for sure, they really, really like Ryan Niblett, and this is not a way for them to try to figure out a way to massage him out of the program. They want him on the field.
Well, it's 12 and 21 are making a comeback because everyone's playing two high safeties now. So the pass game is getting canceled out. So you're seeing like resurgence of like flex bone principles and stuff like that. So you're going to see more running backs on the field. So this would also be in trend for whenever they do have two high safeties. You can have two running backs and one of them can function as a receiver too. So that's going to have a lot of schematic value. So that's a green check mark fit whenever I hear that from Eric. That's going to be important. Second, Dalen McCutcheon out of the slot behind DeAndre Moore. It would make sense that he's getting a lot of shine too because he's not buried on the depth chart there if he's in the slot behind Moore. But man, he wasn't even the flashy 5-star of that class, right? We were talking about Lockett and French, or the fans were, but Dalen McCutcheon, since stepping on campus, has been getting a ton of praise.
The second that DeCorian Moore went to Oregon, I said they need to go all in on Dalen McCutcheon because he is an all-around wide receiver. I'm not surprised by this. He seemed the most college ready. And then as between Jamie French and Kalik Lockett, you can maybe make a case for Kalik is college ready, even though he's on the slender side. But McCutcheon is, he's a very well-rounded overall wide receiver. He could play inside or outside. He was highly productive at the 6A level, running a number of different concepts. Good after the catch, good before the catch. Just a really well-rounded guy. I'm not surprised to be hearing these things. I think I predicted it, but he still has DeAndre Moore ahead of him. That said, he could play outside. DeAndre Moore could end up playing outside. Sark is not beholden to where these guys are at. He likes to move them around. Dalen McCutcheon's going to have a very bright future. If my prediction on DeAndre Moore rings true and he has a good enough year to go pro, then you're looking at Dalen McCutcheon as a foundational wide receiver for 2026.
Yeah, look, McCutcheon was one of my favorites. I think out of the freshmen coming out of high school. I don't know what's in the water at Lovejoy, but man, I don't know. They're producing receivers at a high rate from Livingstone. Jalen Lott was over there. Cal Parker was there, right? And so ever since he was a freshman, he was able to mix in with those guys and play at Lovejoy. I thought he was a special player then, right? And so it doesn't surprise me now he's got to the college level. He's kept that same work ethic, training, trying to be better and be college ready for a long time, man. He was always one of my favorites. I just thought he'd come in ready. He can run every route and pick up concepts faster than most, where to be in spots and where to sit down in the zone. That's really hard for a freshman to do. And I think he's already kind of got those intangibles.
And then Eric was able to sneak in a single sentence here that of a lot of values. Sources expect Ryan Wingo to be Arch Manning's top target, with DeAndre Moore the top complement. I was actually surprised to hear that. I would think that Moore would have been the top target just because their connection. But if Ryan Wingo can make that jump, play wide receiver, not play athlete, man, every time I rewatch games, dude, and he looks incredible running. So if he can figure out route releases and his leverage and be where Arch wants him to be, of course he can do that. But the hamstring thing in spring kind of made it less clear, I guess.
Yeah, he came back in their modified spring game final practice that was closed to the fans. And I heard the DB coaches were shaking their head going, man, I'm glad we didn't have to face him all spring because they see that he's a different sort of player. Arch throws bombs, and yes, he's thrown those to DeAndre Moore, but he's going to throw more of them to Ryan Wingo. They think they feel they have all the confidence in the world in Ryan Wingo. I think fans should too. Yeah, he wasn't on the same page with Arch or with Quinn at times last year. That's to be expected. Development is also to be expected. I don't know if who's going to have more catches. It could be a 1A 1B thing like when it was Adonai and Xavier Worthy. But I think Wingo's the go-to guy. He's got better hands and more bigger body. Going to get some boundary one-on-one looks. Which very might be, kind of schemed to stop DeAndre a little bit more. Wingo's a stud. I think he's on the Romo Dunze path.
Well, if you think about it, Sark plays a lot of 12 personnel, so that's going to bring a safety down into the box far more often. Sark's trying to do that. More then would be capped by a nickel and a safety potentially, so it can X out more, and that means that Wingo will get a lot of looks in the boundary one-on-one. And we know he has the athleticism to contort in the air. It's just if he's at his spot, Wingo even schematically will have a huge advantage here. On the flip side, he starts going off too crazy. Now he's getting capped by a safety, and it's going to open everyone else. But at the end of the day, we need Wingo to be a problem because it's going to open up everybody else as well. All right. Before we keep going, guys, let's hear a word from Andre the Lawyer.
This video is brought to you by Andre the Lawyer. If you're injured, trust the team that secured millions for their clients and helped thousands of Texans with their injury case. Car wrecks, slip and falls, 18-wheeler accidents, on-the-job injuries, and wrongful deaths. Don't let insurance tell you what your claim is worth. Hire Andre the Lawyer to fight for you. Principal office is in Dallas, but they serve Texans throughout the state. So don't wait and call Andre the Lawyer today at 214-444-8808. That's 214-444-8808. The contact information is in the description.
And that's not all, guys. Guess what? Inside Texas, the best board in the galaxy right now, rated number 1. We're offering a flash sale, $1 until 8:30. That'll get you to the season. $1, guys. As the season heats up, we're going to have incredible analysis always by Paul and Ian. I might pitch hit a little bit there. And then, of course, recruiting, which some of you don't have the stomach for right now, but stay locked in. It's always going to be exciting. Only $1 single, guys, until 8:30. Hell of a deal.
Let's do it.
All right. Next position. Gentlemen, everyone is very excited for edge. And I share that sentiment. My biggest question whenever we were talking about moving more to a linebacker position, more like a Will, to me, it didn't really make sense if he wasn't going to start at the Will position over Leon, because then we don't have Trey Moore on the field and we have Colin Simmons on the field. Well, it seems like I don't have to worry about that anymore, and the football coaches are smarter than me. Shocking. But what's the deal with Moore and Simmons being able to play at the same time?
Yeah, news almost always reverts back to what we initially report, but we cover the whole thing. When they moved him to linebacker, obviously we have to cover that and ponder, what does that mean? Why did they do it? Was it cross training, or was it ways to get him on the field with Colin Simmons at the same time? Maybe both. But when he came back, a big selling point was, and he thought he was going to be overshadowed. He thought he should go to the NFL. He didn't want to play behind Colin Simmons. They said, no, you guys are going to be on the field a lot. You'll play one side, he plays the other side. That's what they're working on in these player-led practices right now. So that's going to hold true. He's going to be edge. We might see him play linebacker because he's such a good blitzer. We might see him a linebacker to do him a favor, to give the NFL a look at him chasing from one side of the field to the other, see what his lateral movement looks like, because he does move like a linebacker. And that's going to help his draft prospects. They're going to be on the field a lot. Sark said this on that really good Third and Longhorn podcast, where he's looking for the guys that have a lot of versatility. And right now, Trey Moore has a lot of versatility. We know Colin Simmons has a lot more versatility than we even saw last year. We see him rushing the passer and playing the run pretty well. They're going to have him dropping in space a lot. They'll have him moving over and probably even playing Mike at times just to throw teams off. I think he actually did that a time or two last year.
Yep.
That's a dynamic duo. Now, they're not always going to be on the field together because you got Ethan Burke. You're going to want Ethan Burke out there on, run downs and, standard downs, but they've got a lot of options. Speaking of, I think Brad Spence is up next, right?
Yeah. And so we get Brad Spence from Arkansas. He's known for being a pass rusher. In any other situation, you don't have an Anthony Hill, right? I think Brad Spence is your starter. And that could be the case next year too. But we're seeing him spin down to edge, and we're seeing this trend all through college football and the NFL that these linebacker-sized bodies now, if they're aggressive enough, you can put them on the edge and work into certain packages. And then you have situations where, like Eric said, Colin Simmons can drop to the flats. It'll help our coverage, but it'll help our pressure package too. Now you can get Ant Hill involved more, Brad Spence involved more on the simulated stuff. So this is great news. We're just seeing this really impressive room of linebackers and edges look like they're actually going to be fully maximized.
I love the Spence get out of Arkansas for everything he does, not just this year, but next year. I love the versatility. He played defensive end in high school, let Arkansas train him up to play linebacker from Texas swoop in and reap those rewards. But yeah, he's working edge as well. I think that's obviously cross training. I think, you've got to plan for every scenario. What if something happens to Colin, God forbid? Brad Spencer just, they want to get these guys on the field as much as they can and in the ways that showcase their best abilities, put them in the best position for success. This tells me that Leonga Lafau is going to start, which I suspected, but we heard Brad Spence so freaking much during the spring, I started to wonder. Get your best 11 on the field. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Hey, going back and watching the film, even last year, Trey Moore played more linebacker than I even thought. So I feel like he already got a lot of reps last year. But then speaking about Brad Spence, and I'll ask you what you think, Eric. You kind of see a little bit of Kosi Akpala, who primarily edge in high school, who they can kind of cross train and teach him up at linebacker. And Kosi may be more explosive, but kind of same guy.
Yeah, Kosi looked more like a linebacker doing it, where Brad was kind of bulky and played with that low sort of Kosi's kind of a face-up guy and a knifer. Brad had real defensive end ability, just not the length that you're looking for. At least not ideally. Now he's a bulked-up sort of boxier player. Different body types to me, even though both are going to be muscled up. Kosi more longer. Kosi reminded me of Malik. Malik played all edge coming out of high school. Yeah. Malik was more explosive, but similar to him. but I love Spence, as Roaster mentions. Yes, I think he had a legit sack on Kelvin Banks in that game. It might have been the only sack that Kelvin gave up. I know they said the Georgia guy got him, but hell, Quinn had four seconds to get rid of the ball. Felt like 4 hours to get rid of the ball. Yeah, Spence is just good player. Still learning the playbook a little bit too. I think that's probably the move here is probably just playing. It's simpler for him to get on the field right now at edge, but they've got edge is the best stockpiled position, the best, and if this extends into recruiting to guys that are going to get drafted after this year, it's the best position on the entire roster. Who would have thought that just a few years ago?
Yeah. Anthony Hill and Brad Spence as the starting linebackers with Leonga and Ty Smith backing up would be the best linebacker room in the nation. Well, it's going to be Leonga starting at will. So that's going to be the big thing. Find the spot for Brad Spence to fit in. And then, of course, I really just clicked this comment because I want to talk about Ty Anthony Smith. We know what's up there. He's gonna rotate in the third quarter and get an interception. Everyone's going to be like, whoa.
Well, I mean, them moving to Brad Spence around and having Brad play edge might be a play to get Ty Anthony on the field as well. To have him spell. They could have. This is what I thought when they got Spence. I figured Spence would back up Hill, and then Ty Anthony would back up Leonga. Now I expect Leonga to start. He's fantastic in coverage, but Ty Anthony is also fantastic in coverage. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to change anything when you bring in one for the other. I don't think Spence is going to beat out Leonga.
Yeah. Leonga can drop and play coverage, which is really important. And he can also – that weak hook's really important in cover 3, and we're going to play a lot more one high. We'll see there. I think Leonga has the traits to maximize that kind of weak hook linebacker in a cover 3.
It wouldn't surprise me if Leonga had 4 picks this year.
Yeah. All right, so we have all the edges there. Okay, so here's the thing. So main backups. We have Colin Simmons at our buck, which is your traditional kind of pass rusher, right? Your weak side or boundary pass rusher. Behind him right now is Vosick as the 1 and 2.
Well, they rotate a lot. This was more of this. I don't know how I worded it, but this is more of how we think things are going to shake out during August practice and maybe in the season. They're moving guys all over the place.
Okay. So we can kind of roughly slot that in, but like we said, it's not this black and white with how we're trying to scheme everything up. On the strong side, that's the Ethan Burke side, right? That's the guy that's normally going to try to close off the run, play to the field, that kind of stuff. Generally, you want a bigger body at this jack position. So it makes sense that we have Zena Umeozulu, who's been gaining size, backing up Ethan Burke, and then Lance Jackson, who I think is going to be incredible, also has that huge size for that jack position. So that's interesting on the opposite defensive end side.
Yeah, Vosick could play both. Zena could play both. So that might, it might come up in August where you flip-flop them. But they've got a reason to do what they do. I'm not seeing exactly what they're doing in practice, but you could have Zena on one side and Vosick on the other, and you're still going to have a very good set of edges, whether you're rushing the passer or playing the run.
Sure. And then your final note, Eric, on that last sentence, Justice Terry as a defensive end in base. And what we mean by base is like a 3-4 defense. So a really big edge. That could be a spot to find Justice Terry reps, and that would be super cool.
Excellent way to get him on the field. Pin his ears back, let him play. He's going to be surrounded by a lot of mature veteran players that if he makes a mistake, they'll still be okay, most likely. But you got to find a role to get him on the field. His body type doesn't really scream anything other than that right now. Outside of pass rush situations. But yeah, that's something that could, this is how they brought along Vernon and Alfred. Both of them played that position in 2022, maybe even a little bit in 2023. It's just a great way to get him on the field. He's not going to be stressing. The team's not going to be depending on him. He can just go out there and play rather freely. I'm excited to see him. We continue to hear good things about him.
That's a great way to get young talent involved. Give them a limited menu of what they can do, and give them a sub package, and then see what happens with it. Okay, cool.
That's a huge part of it. We were talking about how they develop so well earlier. That's a huge part of it. They bring them along slowly, and as they earn trust, they play more. And so you've got these guys that are going to play. Kobe Black, whenever he eventually plays, is going to have experience because could start this year, but he gained valuable experience last year, even though they were pretty deep at corner.
Speaking of corners, we have the young cornerbacks here. First thing we heard is about Cade Phillips, special athlete as a younger guy. Future's bright there. We've heard a ton about Grayson Littleton at the kind of the nickel spot going forward. And if you listen to that kid talk, man, we should have known that was Texas day one. That kid is incredibly bright. I didn't even know. So Grayson Littleton's been getting a lot of shine. So those are the younger guys, as well as a Caleb Chester as a great program fit, hard worker, all of the intangible traits. We mentioned Kobe Black. When Eric was talking to his source last week, the source mentioned Muhammad and Black. And then Eric said, oh, that's interesting. You didn't mention Gilbo. So kind of what's going on there as that battle progresses.
Yeah, I mean, Black is having a really good offseason. Especially he had a good spring. It seems like he's coming on, and we're hearing a lot about him in 7-on-7. Pretty much every week he gets mentioned. There's always that intersection where talent trumps experience. It's just a matter. It's different for every competition. I'm wondering if August is going to be that intersection. I'm not sure. I'm not writing off Jalen Gilbo. It doesn't really matter. They're both going to play a ton. They like to rotate cornerbacks as much as anything else. It's key. If you're a cornerback, you do want to be that third guy. So, maybe the competition ends up being Roberson versus Gilbo or Roberson versus Black. I don't know for sure. But Kobe Black is going to play a ton this year. And I think it's very possible that he becomes a starter at some point this season, maybe even in August.
So do we have any kind of concept on why maybe Gilbo's not snatching the job outright? Is it a athleticism thing, like carrying people downfield, or is it a lack of awareness of the scheme? Or
I think he's playing perfectly fine, and they could win a ton of games with him at cornerback. They can win a national championship with him at cornerback. He's just doesn't have the length and talent and physical advantages that Kobe Black does. It's not anything. He's not doing anything wrong. That's why.
So this is a good thing. We're hearing Kobe Black.
Yeah, people. Like I said, if the experience factor is what's keeping you behind, you do have more talent, and everything else is equal except for experience. And then you start gaining experience, you're going to pass the guy ahead of you if you're more talented.
And he's slimmed down a little bit too, right? Black slimmed down a little bit. Doesn't look as safety-ish, I guess.
Yeah, he hovers between 190, 195. Somebody said, somebody told me he lost some baby fat. I'm like, I never saw any baby fat on that dude, but that just tells you he's lean and mean right now. But this happens all the time. The more talented player, jumps ahead of the guy that's good and wily, but they're still going to play that guy. They're still, if it happens, we're not even sure it's going to happen. Gilbo's going to play a lot, like I said, but. Yeah, Kobe Black is just, it goes, this goes back to the high school ranking, that's not always the end all be all, but Kobe Black was very highly rated and Gilbo was rated fairly highly, but, not in the same sort of class.
Yeah, he was at TCU before us.
Yeah, y'all can be matchup dependent. Like going back to Black, they put him in last year versus Arkansas versus Big Armstrong, right? He was in his hip pocket. So he had the ability to play those bigger physical receivers downfield and not get out muscled or out jumped or positioned. So, man, I love that. I love that fade to Black, man. That's I don't know, man. That may be a nickname or something he can use through the season. You come to his side, you're gonna fade to Black. I don't know.
I'm glad Charlie brought that up, and that's something I should have said in all my meandering words. They could be matchup dependent. Joyner Keena loves matchups. PK, it sounds like PK and Nansen are loving matchups too, because that's why we're talking about all these different guys that could play, and they have different strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, we've heard that they're going to play matchups. It was almost it was compared to me from a source that Joyner Keena might be more like basketball, where let's see who they have on the field, let's go throw our guys in.
And that's an NFL style, man. Game planning week to week, and that's what I love as a guy that loves scheme, man. When you can see week to week, and like we said, Kobe Black in the red zone, right? Like a Ryan Watts situation is also valuable. So this is interesting. I wasn't expecting this, frankly. So D tackle being wide open, I had kind of penciled in already that it was going to be Watson, Brevard, second wave, like a January, then a Shaw, and then a Canoe. But that doesn't seem to be the case, which is also a good thing, I guess.
Battling mosquitoes too early in the morning to be battling mosquitoes. That was, oh man, that last call threw me for a loop, because I was penciling Murad Watson and Brevard, maybe January finding his way in there as well. He said, man, just throw them in a hat right now. They all need to keep working. It's competition nonstop at that position. August is going to be awesome for learning a lot about which pairings they like, and who's starting, who's backing them up. A lot of these guys, that's a room that has a lot of different skill sets and strengths and weaknesses again. So if they're looking to play matchups, you want the penetrator versus next to a guy that's going to take and occupy space. They've got a lot to figure out, but right now everybody's working so hard. Everybody's does one day they do something great, and the next day that somebody else is doing something great and standing out. And like I said with Canoe, there he's taking on more leadership role. The coaches always reward leadership. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Now, if I had to pick right now, would I go with my gut and say Watson and Brevard? Yeah, probably so. But there's a lot of practices between now and Ohio State.
Yeah.
A lot of workouts too. Like these workouts count. They're competing right now. It's not just the pads aren't on, they're not competing. They're competing right now.
I'll send it to you guys in the group chat, but I can't remember. There's a podcast. It's called something like Coach Up or something, and it's a coaching podcast where they bring on coaches. Shocking, right? But they brought on one of our strength staff and talked about like his Olympic lifting background and stuff like that. But it was interesting to hear more in depth what the Texas weightlifting program looks like and all that kind of stuff. It was an interesting podcast that we're not covering that side of it that much. And
yeah, send me that for sure. I love that stuff.
Yeah, it was super cool. And then him having to learn that not everyone needs to do Olympic lifts. And then also him learning that, just stacking muscle on a player doesn't mean that you did right by them.
Right.
Speaking of, what was it, Jake Smith that looked like a fullback in the slot because we were just packing muscle on dudes.
Yeah. They had a one-size-fits-all approach under Yancey McKnight. Here it's much more tailored, customized to not just position groups, but players within those position groups.
Yeah, like really trying to give specific sports training to the positions and not just make everyone look like a linebacker. Cool. And then we had a question that we'll be able to hit right now. Are there any updates on Baxter? Hope he is able to come back strong. Well, guess what? Eric has some information for you.
Richard McCleary seems like a guy that needs to take advantage of our $1 subscription because I've got him lined up here on Friday. We talked about we've been talking about it in the last 3 weeks. I think since we discovered that he was back to working out, he hit the ground running. He's not 100% healthy. We'll call it 90%, but he's going 100% out there. He's not hesitating. He's out there working hard. People were taking note of him in agility drills. He put a lot of tension on your knee coming back from a serious, significant injury, not just ACL. And he's just getting after it. So right now it's him and Trey Wisner basically rotating with the ones in 7-on-7. And what I mentioned here is you got to remember Sark loves this dude. loves him. He got to start over Jonathan Brooks the year Jonathan Brooks broke out.
Yeah.
We were absolutely shocked. I was like, how was I wrong on this? Because Jonathan Brooks is just killing it. Yeah. And Baxter got the start even then. So, I do think they're going to have him on a pitch count. Sark has basically said that in a couple interviews that, he doesn't have super high expectations or he's not going to play him a lot against Ohio State. Maybe he's fainting there. I don't know. But he's going to play a lot this year. Like I said, already with the ones, looking good. And, of course, he's the team favorite and has some of those Bijan Robinson leadership qualities.
Got something, Coach?
I'm just glad the guy's back, man. Look, you never know how a dude's going to come back from a knee injury, man. It's scary. And you never know how they're going to come back mentally. I think that's the most important part. But he's out there going 100% and I guess running. I mean, that's impressive, man, because like I said, most people, you just never know, right? I've seen a ton of times where kids they're not the same person, same player that they were before having a knee injury. So to see him back going 100%, I love it for the kid because he's such a good person, man. You know what I mean? Like he's one of those guys you kind of follow as a leader on the team. Yeah, and they love him too because if we go to more pulling guard schemes, if you watch Baxter in high school, I mean, that was exclusively, gap runs. So that was his running style. And on top of that, like I said, with this 2 safety surge, you're going to have to run harder now. And that's going to matter. Baxter's a bigger back. And also we're going to play action off of that, meaning we're going to max protect. So you're going to need a big back for pass protection. So it's not just liking Baxter. It's that his body type and skill set is going to be really important schematically this season with how things look to be panning out. Just to say, you see the recent pictures of him, right? How big he's gotten? Yeah. Yeah, he's a big back.
It was just as encouraging to hear he's moving well because of the size gain. A lot of guys get hurt lower body injuries and they gain upper body mass because it's easier to just pump iron all day, upper body. So I wasn't just listening for how he's moving, coming back from injury, but also carrying more weight. Everything sounds good.
Great. And then, of course, we know what's up with Wisner. He's going to do his job, and he's going to be a team leader. So no shock there on Wisner. And then we keep hearing really good things about Clark, man, coming back from that Achilles. He's my favorite run style in this group of running backs by a mile. Loved his huddle. So, hey, if we can get this little trio of guys going, that running back room has upside.
Yeah, they're going to be good at running back. It's, and I think they're all going to make each other better too, because they're going to keep them healthy. That was Trey Wisner was beat down last year. He's not going to have that problem this year. At least he shouldn't have that problem. Yeah, there's going to be bumps and bruises. There always will be playing that position, but he was legitimately. He probably shouldn't have been playing in some of those games, but he did it for the team. And he's a Sark favorite too, so he's going to play. It's just a matter of how the carries break down.
There's a magic number in the NFL. I think it's 326. Anything past 326 carries, there's a huge diminishing return on the back and a huge injury spike. So and I'm sure that's even lesser for college football. So there's a magic number there where you don't want to run guys too much. And luckily with this group of guys, we're going to be able to rotate. And Eric talks about it'll kind of be seen like a defensive tackle rotation. And then you have Niblett too, who can do some cool stuff back there. So that's going to be important as well. All right, so final little recruiting questions that we got that we'll just hit real quick. Is it true there's only 4 tackles on this team? Gooseby, Brooks, Baker, and Kojo is a twin A tackle.
Yeah, there's 4 tackles, or you can have Jaden Chapman too, who's been a little banged up. But we're talking about functional tackles they feel good about playing right now. Gooseby, Baker, and then Brooks. Is the twin a tackle? I think Jordan Coleman is at least a tackle at the start. I think they took him with that in mind. There's no way that he was just taking all these guards, right? So Flood sees it the same way, and it shows up on tape the way Jordan Coleman moves. He's got some real quickness to his body, even though he's a bigger kid. So, but he's not going to be ready to play anytime soon. So he's definitely a tackle that counts, but not for what we're talking about. Texas trying to win a national championship, somebody coming in and playing against A&M, being ready to play late in the season. Those guys aren't that.
I'm going to be scouting offensive tackles all year. All right. With Finley going to Notre Dame, is the wide receiver class staying at 3 because of how young the room is, or do they continue to look for a 4th, maybe circle back on someone like a Mason James? Real quick, Finley with a really classy post-commitment post where he thanked all the teams that were recruiting him. Man, that one hurts, but that's just one of the ones that just wasn't meant to be. And he's gonna fit good, man, at Notre Dame. I'm gonna watch him. It's same with Greathouse. I like those players. As long as we don't play them, I'll be rooting for them. But back to the main question here: are we gonna stay at 3?
Well, they're still trying to get Jalen Lott. They got, we're counting Jermaine Bishop as a wide receiver at this point because that's where he's going to start his career off. So they've already got 3 right now, and they're looking for Jalen Lott. So. Yeah, the room is young, and that's why they're not going to break the bank and go buy some, 5-star. That's not really the approach this cycle. They did want Caden Finley, no doubt about that. They wanted him bad. It didn't work out. There's nothing Texas could have done about that recruitment. One day, maybe we'll go into depth on that one, but there was nothing Texas could have done to win that one at the end. So it wasn't about money. So that's a tough beat. We don't see him flipping. And we got Jalen Lott deciding tomorrow. Texas has been trying to. Once Texas realized they weren't going to get Finley, they circled back to Jalen. Asked him if he was up. And so conversations have been going pretty well with them. Texas is back in the mix now. Now you're watching it. Even if he does pick Oregon, we'll probably continue watching that one because. Hey, you don't want to lose that guy with that upside, even if he is a little bit raw as a wide receiver. And then, the legacy aspect, I think there's a little bit of pride of wanting to keep that guy where he should be. But also, he kind of fits the profile of what they're looking for this cycle. They got a lot of guys to develop. They don't need anybody right now that's going to be expensive and cut in line. They can take another high upside developmental player.
I like this group of receivers, man. Finley would have been cool too, but I really like Chris Jackson's takes. At wide receiver. I think they're going to be, they might have to wait a little while, but once they do, these are receivers. And then with Jalen Lott, man, I think hell of an athlete, Could be the sickest corner ever, but whatever.
I think he saw Bishop's receiver film at OT7. He went at the 7-on-7 state tournament and like absolutely killed it, that receiver. But it's become the staff recruitment. Like when Sark gets involved heavily in the recruitment, you know it's serious, but everybody from the staff is talking a lot, right? So that kind of tells you the importance of what they think about him and where he's at in his recruitment. Like even though he decides tomorrow, watch out until December. I think he's one of those flippable candidates if he chooses somewhere else.
The comp for Jermaine Bishop is Jalen Waddle. So he's not going to go to DB. He's going to have one practice, and Sark is going to say, you just stay over here.
Yeah. I'm the head coach. I'm the boss. All right, cool. Guys, you don't want to miss out on this. Our Paul Wadlington just dropped his 2025 Longhorn football prospectus, Thinking Texas Football. It's the best Texas football preview ever. Beyond being incredibly insightful, Paul always has unique takes. He's well thought out, but you'll actually laugh out loud every other page of this book. His writing style always shines in these. And it's not just a Texas football preview, guys. It's a whole SEC preview. He does a section on roster management where he talks about maybe the pitfalls of OU style. This is wild. And then our own Eric Nalin also writes his own recruiting section. Guys, you don't want to miss this. It comes out every year. There's no better things. All the links are in the description. You can get the ebook or you can get the print version. Very reasonably priced as well. Not like some of those previews that are like, yeah, for $60, you can read wrong information about X team. This is the best in the game, hands down. Make sure to go buy your copy of Thinking Texas Football. While you're at it, guys, add a $1 membership to Inside Texas all the way until 8:30, all the way into the Ohio State game. You'll be locked in. Eric's going to crush it. Eric and Justin are going to crush it on team news as soon as fall camp fires up. There's no better place to be. And also our community, man, is smart and funny. So you'll have a good time hanging out with us. And, of course, you can ask us questions directly as well and get information if you don't want to wait till the show to ask something. So, all right, fun stuff, guys. I enjoyed it today. Luckily, Nana's internet held up well, too. That was important for me. Yep. That's always nerve-wracking, but that went well. Chat, thank you, guys. You're super active today. You guys always help drive the show. Thank you, Coach. Thank you, Eric. Have a great day, everyone. Peace.